Greetings and welcome to the Dr. J Vlog series. It's Sunday, August 17th, 2025, and on Sundays we talk about purpose and meaning of life. And this is the start of week 33 in the Dr. J Vlog series. Yes, I hope viewers will appreciate that this is the 225th consecutive day that I've posted a new vlog. Yes, every single day since January 4th, I've posted daily on the channel. And here we are at the start of week number 33. So please, if you do like the content, be sure to hit like for today's vlog. And if you haven't already, please be sure to hit subscribe. Please join the channel. And would you be so kind, this is a bit of a favor, but if possible, would you be so kind as to maybe recruit one more person in your social sphere to join the channel as well, to become a subscriber? That would help tremendously. So thanks in advance. So this week's theme is deference, the ability then to show respectful humility, especially toward an elder or someone who's your superior, if you will, in some context or another. It also can mean to carry out the wishes of others. So that's a related meaning there as well. And I think we suffer to some degree these days in our culture from something of a deference deficit, I'll call it. Maybe we have for quite some time. Maybe this goes back generations, especially in regard to our elders. For generations, at least in much of the US and Canadian culture, we haven't necessarily always held our elders in the highest regard. And especially if families move away, to different cities, that sort of thing, we don't even necessarily always get to know our elders, our grandparents, or the older generations in general. Now, many do, of course, have grandparents and other relatives who are deeply involved in their lives, and especially if they were raised in more traditional cultures or in different places of the world, especially where there have been indigenous or village elders who are held in high regard, high esteem by people in general. They're trusted for their wisdom, for their abilities to resolve conflicts, and just for their knowledge and life experience. So in our culture, I think we often talk about the elderly in more general and, sometimes dismissive terms, or maybe sometimes in sympathetic terms. But that's very different and then the term elders. We don't use the term elders that much. We talk about the elderly, not our elders, or the value and the importance of our elders. And it gets harder too because in our culture, elders are living longer on average than ever before, certainly than just a few generations ago. And what happens as we age? Well, many folks obviously start to suffer declines, not just physical health declines, but obviously too mental declines, cognitive declines. And so in many instances then, as our elders get into those later years, and sometimes even before, they may start to suffer from dementia or other conditions that strip them of their autonomy and often of their memories and some of their abilities along the way. And so it's sort of harder to accord elders the same status if they show such a precipitous decline in their own physical and cognitive abilities. Again, I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm saying that, you're not going to go to the person who's suffering from Alzheimer's and who can no longer remember even who you are necessarily to get advice about a major issue in your life. They might still be able to offer some wisdom too, but you see the point. And then these same ideas to some degree apply to our parents too, right? Do you tend to show deference to your parents? Perhaps, but maybe not always. Maybe not so much as a rebellious teen or maybe as the know-it-all young adult that you are or once were. And so we have to then, sort of monitor our responses even to our parents and even as we get older and become autonomous, independent adults running our own households, etc. So the relationships often change a bit with respect to our parents. And then there's the deference to those outside of our families. Do you show deference to other people that you meet on an everyday basis? To the police officers, to the medical professionals, the teachers, to the carpenters, to the shoe repair folks. In other words, towards those who have certain skills and or abilities that you yourself may or may not have. So here I'm talking about deference to others with specialized forms of expertise. Okay, so to me then, the issue of deference especially reduces to two broad categories of people who have special statuses or positions in our lives. That is, whether as an elder and or as an expert. Sometimes they can be both. So the elders and the experts then are the keepers of specialized knowledge and wisdom, the stuff that's pertinent to helping us understand the purpose and meaning of life, both from a philosophical and often from a practical standpoint as well. So there's an important lesson here too, I think. Do you have elders and experts in your life whom you can trust implicitly with important questions, the people that you can rely upon and turn to for sound advice? Can you set aside your own ego and even some of your own preconceived notions and biases to trust in the words and the wisdom, the ideas of respected individuals? And so that's one area where I've been pretty fortunate over the years. That is, I long ago developed not only a love from learning, or love of learning, but I love to learn from others, from listening to folks through public lectures, or just watching them perform whatever they do, from music and plays to framing a house. I used to love to work with my brother-in-law, one of my brothers-in-law, and one of my late brother-in-laws, who were really very good and knowledgeable about carpentry as well as wiring and drywall and plumbing, etc. You name it. And so I would take an opportunity whenever I could to go work with those brothers and learn from them. I liked learning about the trades. I liked learning about things I didn't know how to do. I spent a couple of hours one afternoon, I recall up in Toronto in Etobicoke, just watching an artisan, and I use that term deliberately, putting up crown molding. He was incredibly skilled. He knew all these little secrets, but he also had excellent techniques. And the point is that when he finished the job of the crown molding, and I don't know if you ever tried to put up crown molding. I actually tried to do that once some years ago. So frustrating. But I didn't have the training. I didn't have the skills, the knowledge, etc. But watching this guy work, it was watching an artist. It was watching watching him paint the Sistine Chapel or what have you, right? It was just amazing. So, or he's like watching a world-class piano player performing Rachmaninoff. Okay. Anyway, at the very least, then, I think most of us can agree that there are obviously some real experts out there, many experts in all kinds of different fields. And hopefully we're smart enough then to show them deference and respect, for they deserve that at the very least. And then again, I like to learn. I like to do a lot of things myself, to be sure. But I really love, I would say even more, showing deference to others and allowing them to do what it is that they do so well. That's a great joy. Okay, but then there's the issue of elders. And now I'm meaning this not just in terms of the people who might literally be senior citizens. They could just be or older than ourselves. I'm talking about people of any kind who carry deep wisdom and knowledge and abilities. And in that sense, they have things to say about different facets of the lived condition. So elders can be many different kinds of people and able to share many different kinds of wisdom. And my point here is that I'm talking about people who have been through the trials and tribulations and have so much to offer then on the basis of what they've experienced and what they've learned over the years. Again, I would ask, who are those people in your life? Can you name 5 people off the top of your head who are elders, who are trusted individuals, wise folks that you can turn to in times of troubles or in times of questioning or when you just need some general advice of some kind or another? And if not, why not? Why don't you have elders? And can you go acquire some? Look them up online. Maybe that would be a service we could start, right? Elders for hire. Anyway, and by the way, they don't have to necessarily be the living elder. What? Yeah, in other words, we can turn to their words. We can turn to their books, their articles, their letters, their diaries, and learn from our elders in that way. And that's, of course, why we read books and sacred texts for that matter, right? To better understand the wisdom that's been passed down from so many generations ago. And in the sacred text, the stories and the parables, the verses, and we develop then a broader kind of cosmological frame of reference. So ideally, I would suggest we have elders who are living in the present among us and people that we can turn to and we have solid relationships with. But we can also, of course, always turn to the written word as well and other sources to gain wisdom. And so that's the challenge this week. I want to encourage everyone, then, myself included, to spend more time, or to set aside more time, if you will, pursuing knowledge and wisdom from elders and experts, whoever they might be in your life. Setting aside our own egos, and then actively seeking out the wisdom of the elders and the experts, because they're all around us if we're willing to stop, look, and listen. So spend more time listening, absorbing, and thinking about what they have to say. And yes, that includes more time reading too. So I'm lucky on that latter point because I'm able to do a lot of reading. I'm paid. I'm supposed to do a lot of reading. And here's just one little thing that I was reading recently that partly inspired the theme for this week. So it comes from Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. It's kind of his masterpiece, I think. And among the many paragraphs of wide-ranging reflections and advice, he offers the following in talking about his adoptive father. Okay? And Marcus Aurelius writes, most importantly, his readiness to defer ungrudgingly to those with some special ability. It might be in literary expression or the study of laws or customs or any other subject, and to give them his own active support to reach acknowledged eminence in their own specialties. Acting always in accordance with tradition and yet not making the preservation of tradition an overt aim, end quote. And indeed, that's the other part of the equation. Certainly, it's part of my life's mission, as I shared with you before, to encourage others then to develop their special abilities and their expertise, to reach their acknowledged eminence, as Marcus Aurelius said, in their own right. So it's obviously polite and kind of students, for example, to show me some deference as appropriate in the context of my university teaching, or at least in my areas of expertise. But I long ago realized that there's a lot of brilliant students out there, and of course some of them are certainly smarter than I am, and they were brilliant long before they came into the classroom with me, right? My only advantage in the classroom is simply that I've been studying the stuff, typically the stuff that I teach, I've been studying for many, many years or decades perhaps. But it's kind of like, you'll find that when you're teaching a musical protege, for example, right? And you watch just how quickly they end up, not how quickly they learn, but then how quickly they end up surpassing you as the teacher, and they become the mentor, the expert at least. Okay, and to me, that's part of life's great journey and joy. It's whether you're talking about in parenting or in teaching or coaching or just working with others or helping others in general. So on the one hand, it's a blessing then to learn from those who have come before. Like when I was studying karate, we had our senseis, right? And sensei literally means one who was born before another. So they're the ones who came before, and that's what they're sharing their knowledge and wisdom in the martial arts. But the expert, of course, may also come along later too, right? So for example, I trust and believe in our 5 sons, and I can be humble and deferential and learn from them, each of them, in various ways. And of course, from my wife too, obviously, and so many others. So, in other words, just because I'm the dad of the 5 young men obviously doesn't mean I know everything. I certainly don't. And that's probably why they don't watch my YouTube videos of the Dr. J vlog series very often either. Okay, sometimes they do. But the point is that they could make their own videos. And so could you, right? In other words, in the areas in which you have specialized knowledge and expertise, you have a voice, you have something to say. Okay, and certainly I can learn from my sons, and I tell my students I could learn from each of them if they were, you know, tasked with giving a lecture, at least on something that they specialized in, that they'd studied, that they've become an expert in. Everybody has skills and knowledge and expertise. Okay, all right. So, and then on the other hand, it's also a blessing then, and this is the final point, to be able to encourage other people to develop their skills. In other words, to recognize their abilities, their skills, their knowledge bases, and then encourage them to become the experts that they're capable of being. And hopefully, then they become the wise elders and the carriers of knowledge and wisdom that they pass on to future generations. All right, so much more to say on the subject this week. That's it for today. But for now, may you and yours as ever continue to create peace in your lives, nurture love in your hearts, and dole out hugs and positivity in abundance. And I hope to see you tomorrow.